Go ahead and call to order the regular city council meeting for the night of Monday, April 22nd to order. So pledge allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I'll look for approval of the agenda tonight.
So moved. Second.
A motion and second, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. And we'll move on to the consent agenda. Joe, can I review that?
I would. Thank you, Councilmember Sullivan. I almost said Mr. Mayor, sorry.
No.
A few items on tonight's consent agenda. The first is approval of the minutes for the City Council regular meeting on April 8th, 2024. Second is approval of disbursements through today. Included in those disbursements are 4 items over $25,000. The first to Stewart C. Irby Company for a switch, 69 kV switch for the electric department, $99,540. Second to the Minnesota Department of Revenue, city sales tax for March 2024, $43,101. Third to Bolton & May preliminary engineering for the North 4th Street reconstruction project, $38,632.50. And finally to Northland Trust debt service on the 2014 A bond, totaling $33,587.50. Item C, approving a bingo permit for social activities at the community center. Item D, approve a gambling permit for St. Anne's for September. And item E, approve a liquor license for the Sueur Baseball Association.
All right, does anybody have any discussion on any of these items? If not, I'd look for a motion for approval.
So moved.
Motion, looking for a second.
Second.
Motion second, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Public comments. Anybody sign up?
Yes, there's, yes, me. Being penciled around for reference.
Just have to introduce yourself.
I'm Beth Cornish. I'm with the Henderson Independent, and I'm here to read a statement on behalf of my boss, Rachel Miller, who is the owner, editor, and publisher of the Independent, though these are pretty much of my views as well.
Welcome back.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. I'd like to make you aware of an issue that is being discussed right now in the Minnesota legislature that could have serious consequences. A proposed bill, Senate Education Omnibus Bill SF 3567, would eliminate the requirement for school districts to publish public notices in an official newspaper. The proposed language in section 24 states, publishing proceedings allows a school district to publish the proceedings of a school board meeting on the official district website or the official newspaper of the school district. This proposal came on the heels of the announcement that Southwest News Media is shuttering its doors, which includes the Shakopee, Prior Lake, Savage, and Jordan papers, along with Chaska and Chanhassen, Litchfield, and Hutchinson. I understand this leaves a huge gap in coverage, but existing language provides a new home for those notices in another newspaper, either in that county or an adjoining county. That allowance is why the Jordan School District was able to appoint Henderson as its official paper, which was approved on Monday, April 8th. Their council is poised to consider us as well this evening. The reason I am addressing you today is because if passed, this bill will deal a tough and deadly blow to newspapers in our democracy. If school districts can publish these notices online, they won't spend money to publish them in newspapers. And if the school districts can do it, it only makes sense that townships, cities, and counties will follow. What is a newspaper? It is more than just words on a page or documented history of a community or region. Your local newspaper is a one-stop shop for information going on in the community. It is coverage of school boards, councils, local sports, obituaries, public notices, ads, and more. If you want to know what's happening in your area, odds are you can find it in the newspaper. I'm sure Sean could comment on this, though he's not here. But when the Belle Plaine Herald closed its doors in 2021, one of the biggest questions we heard is, will you publish obituaries? People commented they had no clue a friend passed away during the interim with the Herald closed and the Indy not yet covering that area. Do funeral homes publish obituaries online? Yes, they do. And yet people still did not know. Just because people can look things up online does not mean they do, and yes, some people do not have online access. Generally speaking, these people know they can find that information in their local newspaper. It is where they are used to looking. The removal of notices or legals from the public will create a gap within our community. It is also an attack on newspapers because it will eliminate an entire revenue stream. On average, a government agency spends about $2,500 a year publishing these public notices in the Henderson Independent. Of the 11 jurisdictions currently running notices in our paper, the most anyone has paid in a year is just under $5,000. Against $1 million budgets, $2,500 or even $5,000 won't go far. It won't cover a new teacher salary. It won't pay to pave a parking lot. It won't get the Sueur Community Center pool up and running again. But add it all together, the revenue from the cities, school boards, and townships in our coverage zone is roughly 25% of my newspaper's annual budget. It collectively pays my salary. If this bill passes, it will deal a very tough blow to newspapers like my own. If this city had to reduce its budget by 25%, do you know what you would cut? If LeSueur small businesses were faced with the 25% reduction in revenue overnight, do you think they would survive? If this bill passes, the Henderson Independent will have a very tough road to navigate, either drastically increase our rates or close our doors. We are not alone in this. I have a hard time believing there are many newspapers out there that could suffer a 5-figure reduction in income with minimal damage, especially after the inflation we have experienced the last couple of years. If you care about local news, if you don't want to see further newspaper closures, then I'm asking you to stand by my side and stand up for the newspaper industry. Please contact your local and state representatives, which in LeSueur are Brian Farr and Rich Drahim, and tell them that you support the existing requirement to print public notices in the newspaper. We need your support now more than ever. And then we have attached all of the contact information that you could possibly want. And we're available if you have any questions.
Thanks, Beth. I'm assuming that was the only one. Okay. Move on to your update. Yeah.
Thank you, Councilmember Sullivan. First of all, wishing everyone here and everyone at home watching a very happy Earth Day. And just a reminder that next Monday, which is Arbor Day, we'll be having a celebration at Joey Glanderson Park. The community is welcome to attend. Reminder to council members that you are invited to attend as well for a tree planting, and the elementary school students will be joining us as well. Friday, April 12th, I had the opportunity to attend a grant opportunity forum hosted by Region 9 down at South Central Services Cooperative. It was a lot of really good information. They had a number of presenters there talking about a number of grant opportunities locally, regionally, some of which were more applicable to the not-for-profit space than the governmental space, but still a good refresher on some of the grant dollars that are out there. A little bit of discussion about the new Taylor Foundation out of Mankato. I don't know if anyone read about that in the paper, but Glenn Taylor's family, there's they own a lot of acreage in southern Minnesota and in Iowa, and they're dedicated to use the rent from that to establish a foundation out of the Mankato area focused on smaller communities. So there'll be more to come in the future for that, but really excited to see growth in our regional grant base. Last week, Public Services Director Transberg and I met with city engineers to discuss a preliminary feasibility report for the 2025 street and utility reconstruction project, colloquially known as the North 4th Street project. So we focused on roadway improvements, and it was really a subset of the initial internal meeting we had on that project to look at some of the key intersections, what some preliminary plans might look like, in particular for the Cathcart North 4th Street intersection. That's what I'm looking for. The intersection, which right now is, everyone here has traveled that intersection. It's really wonky. It's too big for what it needs to be. There's the bus garage driveway at that location. As it stands right now, that intersection, the curve that North 4th Street takes is not, doesn't meet state standards, which nobody is surprised by, I presume. But as I mentioned at the last meeting, now this is considered a state aid project because we were awarded the LRIP funds, therefore we have to follow state standards. So some of these conversations that we're having around intersections, lines of sight will have to follow state standards, or we can apply for variances for them. So we spent quite a bit of time just talking about the roadway itself, pedestrian access, what crosswalks might look like, and we had a number of takeaways sent back with the engineers, and we'll have another meeting to talk about utility improvements specifically. So more to come in May for council updates on that. I met with the group Marginal Aviation. Marginal Aviation is a not-for-profit organization that focuses on antique airplanes. They put on an annual event here at Sueur Airport. They call it the First Ditch. The last few years it's run the first weekend in June. They will be hosting their event again this year, May 30th through June 1st. It kicks off on Thursday evening and runs through about noon on Sunday. It's essentially a fly-in for antique planes. So I met with them in prior years. The city had not proactively met with this group, but we thought it would be valuable to meet with them before the event to understand what the timelines are, how many planes they expect, talk a little bit about, what the approach ceilings are for planes, because of course every time we get any more than 1-2 airplanes a day, we'll get phone calls about how low are these planes supposed to be flying, et cetera, et cetera. So they provide some diagrams that we'll have at City Hall that we can show the public. But it's one of the largest gatherings of antique airplanes in the country, and we're very excited to host again this year at our airport. We had a kickoff meeting last week internally for the 2024 Emerald Ash Borer grant process. So we're in the midst of doing the work that culminated from the 2023 Emerald Ash Borer grant process. We talked about what areas of town, what zones we would try to approach in 2025 for removal of ash trees and replanting of ash trees. And we also talked about the potential for involving some private trees as well. The DNR hasn't in the past committed fully to providing funds for removal and replacement of private trees, but there will likely be an element of that in the 2024 grant cycle. So we're working on a process internally for how we would manage privately owned ash trees. We had an internal staff meeting last Friday to talk about Giant Days, just in preparation for that event, which will be coming up here this summer. We will be meeting with the committee hopefully in the next 2 weeks to discuss their formal plans for the event. We've had some meetings recently internally, again, about our significant industrial users. So for those who are familiar and passionate about the wastewater world, these are agreements that municipalities have with any significant user of water and any user who generates a significant amount of wastewater. The city has 2 such agreements in place right now, one with Agripure and one with the city of Henderson, which isn't an industrial user, but it's a significant user. And so we've been in conversations with the MPCA about the terms of those agreements, and we're looking at opening up conversations with Henderson and Agripure to discuss those agreements. We actually have a meeting tomorrow with the city of Henderson to talk about their wastewater. I will be out of the office this Thursday, Friday, and Monday. So unfortunately I'll miss the Arbor Day celebration next Monday. Our next meeting, and this will be up later on the agenda tonight, but we'll have a regular meeting on May 13th, followed by a work session with the school board. The school board was gracious enough, they've moved their regular board meeting from May 6th to the 13th. I told them they couldn't come in here at 6:30 on the 13th because you all needed to have your meeting, so they're gonna have their meeting up at the middle school, high school, and then they're gonna come down here for the joint meeting, which will formally be a work session afterwards on the 13th. And then just another reminder about the following meeting. The following Monday, which would normally be our Monday meeting, would be May 27th. That's Memorial Day, so the council meeting that was approved when we issued the calendar at the beginning of this year will be Tuesday the 28th. So just a reminder to the public, next, after May 13th meeting, the next council meeting will be Tuesday, May 28th.
Thanks, Joe. All right, with that, we'll move into the regular agenda. The first item up is gonna be the 2021 police squad lease file. So you need to take them on.
I would be happy to, unless Mr. Graff wants to chime in, but,
Before.
okay, thank you. And if there's a request for Mr. Graff to join us, by all means, you can do so. So the police department, up until about 3 years ago, leased all of its vehicles through the state of Minnesota. So the state of Minnesota has a fleet program where municipalities and other state government agencies can lease vehicles. The state buys them, leases them out. And all of our squad cars up until about 2 years ago, we were in a regular lease pattern. We lease a squad car for 3 years, we turn it in, get a brand new squad car, we would outfit it within about for a 3-year, 110,000 mile lease. The problem with, frankly, the state's fleet services has been, over the last 2 years, the lead time on those vehicles has been extraordinarily long. So just to put that in perspective, Chief Tiki in fall of 22 put in a request for a leased vehicle, a new squad. And is that the squad we just got? I believe.
That's one said nothing.
Yes, so we just received that about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago now. And so just received it from the state, so well over a year after we requested it. And following receiving a vehicle from the state of Minnesota Fleet Services, you then have to outfit that squad, and there's a long lead time to get those squads outfitted with cages and with all the hardware you need to install technology and gun safes and all that, gun racks, excuse me. And so Director Graff and Chief Sueur and I have had several conversations about the best way to manage our fleet of squads going forward. And our recommendation is that with the current lease that we have that's up next month, May 17th specifically, for a 2021 squad, we would recommend that the city buy out that lease. We would own it outright. It has 64,000 miles on it. So we put anywhere from 25 to 35,000 miles, no, excuse me, 15 to 20,000 miles a year, each of our squads. So a 3-year, 110,000 mile lease is really, we're getting less than what we're paying for. The officers rotate through the squads on a regular basis so that every one of them gets about the same amount of mileage on it. Ultimately, we're able to better manage the fleet going forward if we can own our vehicle and plan the replacements of those vehicles. So currently our squad lease is just under $900 a month for this 2021 vehicle. We're looking at $1,100 per month plus for new vehicles that once they roll off the plant in Michigan and get to the state and we're issued them, it's about $1,100 plus a month for that lease. So it's not a one-for-one in terms of cost. The cost would actually go up if we would lease a new squad. And then we have to wait to get it outfitted. So, and of course, this wasn't, the buyout itself wasn't budgeted. As you recall, we had a squad that was totaled in an incident last fall. And then we were waiting for another squad, this 2022 squad, which didn't arrive until early 2024. So we weren't budgeting for a buyout specifically. But we would propose that we would use $20,400 from the public safety aid monies from the police department apportioned funding and put it to use here, buying out this lease and ultimately save the city some money. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Director Graff?
No, you covered it all.
Is there any questions for Administrator Roby?
Seems like a great use of that money. I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Got a motion, I get a second. Any further discussion? I do have one question, quick, Joe. We had on the budget for another lease this year though between that. Weren't we proposing another?
We had budgeted for having $3,500 a month for leases, which was essentially,
Is that what it'll be now with this one going away, or
no, we will,
that'll go down?
we'll run under our lease budget.
Okay,
But not
That's
to the
what I
tune of $20,000.
but essentially, I mean, essentially, we were already budgeting that 800-900, whatever it was before this year.
Yes, and we won't have to spend some of the dollars that would have been allocated for outfitting the leased vehicle, but we are outfitting the leased vehicle from 2022 that we just got now that we're in queue for right now.
Perfect. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Move on to 7B, which is the first reading ordinance 605 amendments to industrial district.
Thank you, Councilmember Sullivan. At the March 25th meeting, City Council considered the first reading of this ordinance 605 and recommended that the ordinance be sent back to Planning Commission for further review, specifically around the square footage requirements that were initially recommended by Planning Commission for the retail sales aspect of the zoning language here. And that's retail sales for items, products that were produced on site. So at their April 11th meeting, the Planning Commission had a very robust conversation about, and I would say, Councilmember Schleter, they kind of took it all the way back to the beginning almost of the initial conversation. Feel free to add anything you like. You were there as an ex officio member of the Planning.
They just tried to figure out why they got to that number, where it came in, and if they should take it out and why. They came up with good justification.
Yep, so ultimately it was determined that the square footage, any square footage limit, either in a permitted use or conditional use, didn't meet a justification they were comfortable with, so they decided to remove that and instead place the 30% of the permitted use as a conditional use in both the I1 and I2 districts, so that any business otherwise permitted to operate in I1 or I2 under their principal use would have to apply for a conditional use permit to sell on a retail basis products that are produced on site. And if the CEP would then go to the Planning Commission for consideration and recommendation to the City Council. So one of the most important aspects that Planning Commission considered was the desire to have public input. So some of our I1 and I2 districts do butt up against residential districts. And Planning Commission thought it important for the public to be able to provide some feedback if there's going to be a retail operation operated out of an industrial business. And the recommendation in front of council tonight, as part of ordinance 605, would do just that. They didn't make any other changes to their other recommended changes to the I1 and I2 zoning language. Specifically, they would still like to add agricultural business as part of the I1 and I2. They would also like to add the data centers language. And they also recommended removal of mining as a use in the I2 district. So the only aspect of this ordinance language that they changed at their last meeting was the retail sales and how it was oriented within the conditional use. Anything else, Mr. Slee?
I'm comfortable with the decision now.
Any further discussion?
I just have a question to your point, Joe, where the I-1 and I-2s butt up against residentials. And I know the agricultural thing. I'm just curious, do we have, or does the city have in another ordinance that would cover odors? Because if you're gonna have a cannabis place there, my guess is you're gonna smell it. And you're gonna get complaints. I don't know that this would be the proper vehicle for that, but my question is there one?
So that's a great question. And actually I did exchange an email today with one of the individuals who's part of the CD Gear, who will be setting up shop or planning to set up cannabis production on North 4th Street, about this, about what their, what type of odor generation there might be anticipated and what kind of odor mitigation they might use in their process. And they're going to get back to me on that. So the city's done a couple of things in the past. One is there is an odor in the nuisance code. There's language about noxious fumes or odors that the city has pursued. Now, we generally pursue that on a smaller scale basis. The city did a more broad look back in 2016 and commissioned an odor study of, at the time, Cambria, the Foundry, AgriPure, the Biodigester, Hometown Bio, and the wastewater treatment facility. And they were able to use data from that study to determine, on average, does the odor produced by this site rise to a noticeable level, an obnoxious level, a nuisance level, there's actually a nauseating level. So I would say what we would do with any new business, cannabis or otherwise, is work with the parties early on, as we're doing right now, to let them know, hey, we anticipate getting questions on this, so be prepared to answer those questions when they come forward, or if they are applying for a planned unit development, for example. So be prepared to answer those questions. And also then be prepared to work with the city long-term on when we're getting odor complaints, whether it's for Hometown Bio or it's for the wastewater treatment plant. And, we do get odor complaints from our other industrial partners in town. We take those in both online, we take them over the phone. People will just stop in and say, I stepped outside today and can you smell X, Y, Z? So we do keep track of those, and if there's, the process is to an extent subjective, but we have key operational points of contact at all of our major businesses in town, and we maintain open lines of communication with them. So I can call AgriPure and say, hey, someone thinks it smells awfully barbecue-ish the last few days. Is there anything that we should know? Has anything changed materially in your operations that we should know about, so that when the public calls, I can say, yes, they're doing an extra large batch of this and it'll be done by Friday. And we have the same relationship with Hometown Bio. We have the same relationship with the Foundry. So that's how the city has mitigated it or managed it in the
But
past.
there's no enforceability or mitigate or remedy.
Enforceability is, in our code, would be difficult right now.
So live with it.
To an extent, I think
Because I get jumped about that. The methane plant out there all the time.
yeah, and
Nothing happens, nothing changes.
well, I would say that there we have a closer relationship there than with any other. And so we are in contact with them more than anyone else. Now, at the end of the day, what are we able to control out there? what we're able to control is, the hope is that any of our industrial partners, they want to be good neighbors. They want to operate their business and they're going to make money, but they also want to be good neighbors because they don't want to be a source of frustration or embarrassment for their employees or for their neighbors in the community. And that's where I say I feel comfortable. I can call any of them and say, hey, what's going on down there? Have you changed something? So that I can communicate it to the public. And the response is always, I say no one hangs up on me and says, no one cares what the city thinks. They want to be good partners in that. And what I've iterated to or shared with the folks who are hoping to get into the cannabis business in town is that's how we'll operate here. Is that I'd like to know what mitigation they have in place so that we can feel comfortable with it.
Any further questions? Other, so I'd be looking for a motion to waive the first reading.
If that's what
So
we'll
moved.
certainly can.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to waive the first reading. Any further discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Motion passes. 7C is Summer in the Valley support.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Sullivan. So last year, I almost skipped it here. Last year and the year before, the Sueur Chamber of Commerce has hosted Summer in the Valley, 3 different events. It's the last Thursday, or almost last Thursday, third Thursday in June, July, and August. The Chamber is very excited to be putting on these events again. They're arranging for food trucks and for music and entertainment, and they invite local businesses to come in and do giveaways and things like that. Each of the last couple of years, they've asked the city to be an in-kind sponsor of the event by waiving the Main Street closure fees, delivering and allowing use of a trailer that the wastewater department maintains, bringing in some picnic tables on for each of these 3 events, and then help with promotion through the electronic sign and social media, things like that. So their ask this year is similar to previous years. It is a great event. The chamber's they're very organized and they're very good to staff when staff are working with them. So the ask is that we provide the kind of support that is laid out in our memo, and then the entire community is invited to attend the events this year.
Right, any questions for Administrator Roby? If not, I'll look for a motion to approve provision of support for the 2024 Summer in the Valley events as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Get a motion in a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor? All opposed? Motion passes. We'll move on to 7D, which is the joint meeting topic with LSH School Board.
Thank you, Councilmember Sullivan. I actually had a conversation today with Superintendent Wagner about a few things, and one of which was he handed me a list of the items that the school board discussed at their meeting, which was last Monday. This was actually the same topic that they talked about. What did they want to talk about with the city? So the question tonight, there's no decision required, it's just an open discussion. May 13th at around 7:30, we'll be meeting here with the school board. I do have a few items that I thought are probably the low-hanging fruit in terms of topics. The new elementary school, our future partnership opportunities. We talked about facilities, athletic facilities, things like that. Might be valuable to share with them what city council's adopted goals are, what the school district's role in that might be. We do maintain a very strong, very open relationship with the school district, I believe to both of our mutual benefits. And this is a great opportunity to check in with them. The last time the school board met with the city council was in the run-up to the 2022 referendum, where the school board came in and shared their plans for the August 22 referendum that has passed. They've now as the Henderson Independent reported, they've surpassed the 50% mark in their construction. So what do y'all want to talk about? Anything in particular?
Pretty much have what I wanted to talk about on there. One thing that school board member Tuck had mentioned to me at another meeting, she did mention housing, that they were going to be wanting to talk to us about
What was that?
housing.
Housing.
I believe that's on the list that they gave me. That was on my list as well. Because I know that's one of the persistent challenges that they hear from families and from teachers. Along with daycare, which came up at the EDA today, that was on their list.
Any further thoughts? I think we're good.
I just wondered about if they're sharing or talking about public uses of their facilities. Just because I'm sure the public feels they pay for it. And what do they get out of it besides the kids going to school?
And that's public facilities in general, or specific to the, say, the new tennis courts that they're putting in? We mean like the gym or the,
Yeah, we're gonna have pickleball. Sure, I'm gonna hear about that.
okay, that's a very fair question. And we've had that at an internal level, we've had that conversation with the district previously about, you know, baseball is a great example. Baseball and tennis are great examples. The tennis courts are generally available for the general public to use, but they're not on the general public, you know, they're not on city property. The Osage baseball program is the biggest user, second biggest user behind the Baseball Association, Bruce Frank Field, which is owned and operated by the city. And say operated, understanding that, you know, Mike Feeney's probably out there right now, you know, picking weeds or doing something on the field. So the relationship works out really well, but I think, you know, there's nothing formal in place around, you know, we will rent out the city, for example, when we have the Future of the City Forum. Planning Commission hosts the Future of the City Forum. The last few years that's been up at the auditorium at middle school and high school. We do pay rent for use of that space. Now, because we're a government nonprofit, there's a discounted rate. But I think that's a very fair question.
One other thing we might want to talk with them about is community center and what uses they may have for it, so we can put forward a stronger grant proposal. The second time we have to submit something, I anticipate we'll have to submit it the second time.
And that's on the list as well, actually, which I was thrilled to see, because if we
Good point.
look at this corridor, right, from the current Park School all the way up through Kingsway, is this public use corridor. And where we all benefit from it, right? There was an agreement in place for a long, long time that the school district utilized the community center for anything and everything they wanted to utilize it for. Some of their programming changed as far as what their FIAD programs want to use or need to use.
Price changed.
Price change. Some of our council members are very aware of things that change. So you know, the school district made a decision not to, you know, pay a flat fee every year for just unlimited use of the community center. And that was a, you know, pretty significant hit to the community center operationally. And so there's, you but we still work, Allison Watkins works really closely with, for example, Ms. Hovick on programming for, FIAD classes up there. And so what can we do long-term? One of the things that the rec facilities master plan exercise demonstrated was that we need more gym space in the community, because we heard consistently from the school and from every single association that we met with that they want more gym space. Well, completely believe that, right? Understood. And we heard the community loudly and clearly. But now the district in their gym construction has built a 3-stage gym instead of, potentially what was going to be a 2-stage gym. So now we have extra gym space. So is that enough for our community? So when we look at the community center long-term, is a full-size gym with appropriate side court space and locker rooms, is that an absolute necessity anymore if we can, as a community, utilize some of the space? So one of the things that, I visit with Mr. Wagner about, and I visit with school board members about, is using our resources wisely as a a collective unit as much as possible, so that when we go forward, whatever project we're working on, that we're not that we're doing so in cooperation with the district and vice versa. So we maintain very open communication with them. I expect we will in the future. So facility space is certainly going to be a good topic of conversation at the next meeting.
Any other items? If not, we'll move on to reports and items of appreciation, starting with Councilman Cummington.
I've got nothing for you. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Slater.
At the planning commission meeting on the 11th, which they discussed the industrial zoning amendments, which we just voted on tonight. They had 2 Region 9 meetings, a full board meeting and an economic development meeting. I've reported back to Administrator Roby on the first one, haven't on the second one yet. Also attended a MnDOT District 7 open house for the area transportation improvement program, and I did see Administrator Roby there also. That's all one other thing, Sueur County officials meeting is this Wednesday in Lee Center.
Move on to Councilmember Swanberg.
Nothing tonight.
Councilmember Tui.
Nothing tonight.
Councilmember Williams.
Just have a HRA meeting on Wednesday this week.
And I have nothing. We had an EDA meeting tonight, but there was no major talking points there tonight. So that's it. Then I'd look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Hi.
Motion adjourned.